everybody. Welcome to the Learning Matters event, L&D Lessons from the Insurance Industry with Jill White. We'll be kicking off with Jill very shortly, but before we do, just want 1 minute of your time to ask you whether you've had enough of sitting there taking your notes at home and perhaps you want to do something a little bit more. We are looking for people who are eager to get involved with the HR learning and development community, who want the opportunity to network even more intensively with experts in the field and make friends, and to get the opportunity to really delve into different aspects of L&D and learn a bit more about it and get something that's going to look really good on your CV. By which, of course, I mean, would you like to join our committee? We are looking for volunteers who can join up. We have committee meetings roughly once a month. There's a number of hours leading into these, but it's really satisfying to take part in. You get to learn so much and work with some great people. If you are interested, you would like to contribute, please send an email to bedford@cipdbranch.co.uk for the attention of James Tupper at Learning Matters, just to say you expressed an interest. The message will come to us and then we'll come back to you. What I will do is in a moment you'll take over and I will sneakily at that time put that email address into the chat so you can copy that. So without further ado, Jill, if you'd like to, if I'm going to stop sharing, if you want to bring us up. And so Jill, of course, she's currently the Learning and Assessment Director for the Chartered Insurance Institute. She joined them in 2020, and with quite a task ahead of her, a transformation task, which then had the added. Well, I don't want to do too many spoilers, which I'm sure she will explain. But from transformation to disaster management, and an awful lot of lessons in between, which I'm sure you'll enjoy.
Okay, thanks, Ruth. Can everybody see that screen there? Yeah. Okay, super. So there's no going to sleep tonight, folks. We've got lots of breakouts, and you're going to be doing lots of the work because I want to share with you my experience and also then see how you would have dealt with the situations that I've encountered over the past year, having joined the Chartered Insurance Institute. So just to set a little bit of, give you a little bit of information, it's a professional body just like the CIPD. It's a membership body, very, very similar in terms of the number of members to CIPD. It's been going exactly the same amount of time as CIPD. It's quite remarkable how alike it is. However, it is a bit like the CIPD, which is HR and learning. The Chartered Insurance Institute is insurance and financial services, specifically personal financial services. Okay, but the context is very different. So I'm going to share that with you now. It is a mandated qualification arena, which is, of course, very different from HR and learning. And with the financial services, that's run by the Financial Conduct Authority, who basically set the minimum standards required for individuals. So especially in financial services, you may not even get on the phone to have a conversation with a customer unless you have a certain level of qualification. So we've got the Chartered Insurance Institute, and then we have the Financial Ombudsman, who's overlooking us all the time as well. We have Ofqual, so all of the qualifications obviously managed by Ofqual and their regulations. We have an insurance distribution directive called Inside the World as IDD, which is a compulsory CPD. Again, you may not work unless you have demonstrated your CPD. It's a very, very heavily regulated environment, as you would imagine. We have the Personal Finance Society inside the Chartered Insurance Institute, where financial advisors give advice. And it's very interesting how it insurance and financial services have separated over the years. They used to be very similar, but since all of the regulation and mandation came in, if you're a financial advisor, you now have to be paid a fee up front. You can't gain commission. But if you're in insurance, you can gain commission and you tend to be selling products. So it's two quite disparate sectors now, all under the same professional body. Everybody has to have a statement of professional standing each year, which can only be obtained from the Chartered Insurance Institute. And again, without that, you cannot trade. And that demonstrates your CPD. In order to deliver at a high level, so to give advice on pensions and tax and things like that, or you know, marine insurance and so on, you need to have advanced diplomas. And this all makes our customers and students quite sensitive, shall we say. What happens is that, especially in financial services, they are unable to progress in their career unless they have the right qualification. So, for example, we've got 6 qualifications called the ROs, and you start off at 1 and obviously go through to 6, and you can only do certain things at each gateway. So you can imagine that if the students are unable to get through a gateway, they personally become very anxious and angry, because it's their next level of payment and their next level of career. And obviously the insurance and the financial services organisations want their people to progress, and they're often paying for that progression. So they're also quite demanding. So very different customer from what I was used to at the CIPD, shall we say. Okay, so this is what happened when I went in, and what I'd like you to start to think about here is, what would you do if you encountered these issues? We're going to be doing a breakout room in a bit. So these are the things I found when I took over the business, and this is only covering the qualifications and assessment area, not the other areas of the business that I look after. This is specifically about qualifications, not other learning. Okay, so the first thing is that it is a total spaghetti junction of qualifications. There are 115 different qualification modules, all of which have an exam at the end of them. Now, those exams are multiple choice question papers for the lower levels, or 3-hour full written papers. There's a little bit of coursework, but very little. So those 115 modules make up just under 50 different qualifications. And what we hear from customers all the time is, I have no idea what you want me to study. I have no idea how to get through. I don't know what I need to do. And just to give you a further example, in the certificate in general insurance, which would be like CIPD's certificate in HR, there are 30 pathways, rather than in the CIPD one, I think there's probably about 4. So it's a very confusing, frightening arena. Then we probably have one of the worst learning methodologies known to man, in that basically we create study texts, books. You can have them as an ebook, or you can have them as a physical book, but that is it. There is absolutely no support for the student at all. So they have to sit at home with a book on space insurance, or aviation insurance, or pensions, tax, and work through the book on their own. It could not be more counterintuitive to the way that we know at Learning Matters how the brain actually learns. So it's a very lonely student journey. They tell us all the time that there's no community, there's no support, there's no social aspect. they often stop and start again, or they drop out. I think if it wasn't mandated, we'd probably have about 5% pass rate, to be honest. And then just to add insult to injury, as I say, we examine them after every single module. So again, those of you who know L&D and CIPD really well, they obviously have continual assessment, and you're going through the journey and producing your evidence as you go. In this kind of regulated, mandated environment, it's still all about the exam. Be that, as I say, a written physical paper that's 3 hours long, or a multiple choice question paper that's, say, an hour long. Our students constantly tell us that we examine them on the same stuff time and time again, and there are far too many exams. All of this spaghetti junction and tons of exams and tons of study textbooks, none of which is outsourced at all, means that we have huge teams in the qualifications and assessment area who are just completely tied up with the day job. So every single month they have to update 15 study texts. And that might be translating them into Arabic, simplified Chinese, entering new tax tables. It might be that the government have made an announcement that requires then a change throughout, 40 of the books or what have you. And therefore, it means that the team have no agility to produce new content. So when you ask the team to produce a new qualification, say at the moment, climate risk is a very big thing, they will come back to you and say, we can do it, and it'll take a year, by which time a competitor will have produced it. More importantly, what we're hearing now from organisations is that we are not producing practitioners who are rounded in their skills, and CIPD used to hear this quite a bit as well before the launch of the new profession map. So we are known and trusted for our technical information, technical training, meant to be some of the best you can get in the world. But what we're not helping people with is the professional skills and behaviours that we know from the CIPD profession map turn someone into a fully rounded practitioner. So great at technical, but we're missing the things like situational judgment, ethical thinking, those kinds of areas, data analysis, and we're also missing the coaching, leadership, creating trust behaviours by way of making rounded practitioners. What we've also identified is that our students do want to go from A to B as fast as they possibly can, because each gateway means more money to them on the whole. So what they all do, not all of them, but most of them, is they find the fastest, quickest way to get the qualification that they want, regardless of the fact that what they're learning has nothing to do with their job. So I'll give you a really good example that we hear quite regularly. The study texts on marine insurance, marine hull insurance, are like this, apparently. Really, really difficult, really, really technical. And the study text on tackle insurance are like this. So people will take tackle insurance to get the same amount of credits as marine hull, but they might be in marine hull insurance. So they're just finding a route through their qualifications, regardless of what they do, in order to get credits, which, is ridiculous and no good for anyone, certainly not the sector. And what we're trying to be, just like CIPD, is a career partner. We want people to join us as a student and stay with us for life, to see the benefits of being a member of their professional body. But we're not articulating that at any stage, and we're not supporting the student, and therefore they don't believe they'll get supported further down the line. This then means that a lot of students don't either ever come into membership, because unlike the CIPD, it's not mandated, or they come into membership but then leave quite quickly after they've passed the level of exam that they want to. What's interesting is that the chartered status in the CII is very, very differently valued from the CIPD. So in the CIPD, the chartered status is very highly valued. It's where people wish to get to. I want to be a chartered HR director and I want to be a fellow. Whereas in the CII, the qualification is more sought after than the chartered designation. So it's a bit topsy-turvy, to say the least. Okay. So following all of that, I've created a very wordy vision, so forgive me. I'm just going to pull out the important bits. What I identified that I wanted to do then with qualifications and assessment was to create a qualification learning experience that the learner is engaged, enjoys the experience and feels supported, that the design elements enable sticky learning and the application of knowledge, and that it is assessed in a manner that enables the students to demonstrate the knowledge, skills and behaviours of an excellent practitioner. And in this way, they should begin a lifetime relationship with their professional body that always has the right development at the right point of their career. And most importantly, at each learning intervention, they should be able to do their job better and serve their clients more effectively as a result. So, given all of the issues I've now identified, having gone into the CII, what we want you to do in this first breakout session is to think about what 3 strategic priorities would you as learning and development professionals lead?
The 3 priorities that we looked at in terms of what we would try and implement as part of the L&D strategy was to begin with looking at the soft skills, so incorporating self-reflection, CPD as part of the criteria of their development and the learning and application that then they can then apply to their roles and as they progress through the team. So thinking about how do we get them exposed to the leadership and the coaching skills that they're going to need in order to progress to that next level. Then we also thought about potentially trying to transfer some of the materials for the learning and development to digital, and having a digital platform where there were clear cohorts where they could share any challenges and just generally engage in a conversation through a centralized platform. And then also as part of that, having an opportunity for the more experienced professionals to then be able to provide that mentoring and oversight for those that are going through the actual qualifications. And then lastly is thinking about how to partner with the line of business leaders to start thinking about how to drive more innovation in the teams and get them exposed to different areas of the business, which in turn could make them more agile and create more transferable skills between the departments.
Nice, very nice. Great, thank you.
I spiel over. So thanks.
Thank you, Erin. Is that group happy with that feedback? Is there anything that Erin's missed? No? Right, great, okay. So the group with Susanna in then, can you, whoever's your spokesperson?
That was Ruth and Jose.
This is where one of they've not decided who's going to speak, isn't it?
Jen's gone, so it's got to be one of the two.
Jose,
Susanna didn't join.
Shall we have a go to Jose, and then whatever I missed, you can fill in.
Thanks, Ruth.
Okay, so there's a few things. So one was around trying to move away from the qualifications being purely about repeating technical knowledge. So developing sort of key skills and competencies framework that's similar to the CIPD profession map, and to ensure that the qualification tested the actual application of the skills and knowledge, as well as actually knowing the stuff from the textbooks. And this was around trying to get away from people trying to rush through exams and modules that may or may not have high relevance to their roles and may or may not actually be good at the job when they've done it.
Yeah.
And we were making this akin to like apprenticeships
Yeah.
Because then also they're learning from a mentor who can guide them through the correct, appropriate module selection for their roles. We're also looking at the quantity of modules and the fact that this is going to have the team working on them constantly treading water.
Yeah. And
that to kind of take the time out to review them all, say, do we need them all? Can we consolidate some? Do we get rid of some? Do we need new ones? To free them up, to perhaps be a little more agile in the production and quality of what's being done. And to say it's sort of partnered with the first point, but about moving away from being textbook focused, but being a more rounded learning experience. We were also talking about decoupling the qualifications from award, but of course that doesn't come under what the CII actually does. It's about employers, but we realise it's sadly a part of the puzzle, which is a very, very strong cultural connection between you get this level and you expect some form of monetary reward for it.
Yeah.
But perhaps that could gradually be worked on through more partnership between the CII, for example, and the industry.
Yes.
So it's got more than a monetary value to it. Jose, was there anything else? Anything that I missed? Or?
That was pretty much it.
Great.
The only thing that I think you touched on, but you didn't cover exactly, was the matrix of all the programs, all the modules, to be put together in such a way that there's a non-linear path that people could follow, but they would need to build in the different competencies for different levels of jobs. We talked about marine and the need, for example, for species, but species could also be for trading purposes.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant.
Yeah, okay, that was it.
Do you know what? You're all making me feel a lot better because we're aligned, so that's good. Paula, your group.
So more or less what everybody else has talked about. We started off with talking about definitely streamlining the pathways, sorting out the paths people go into to take exams, and then we were sort of comparing it to what the accountancy fields and other types of industries like that do, and where you have like core modules which everybody has to take, and then there are specialist units, so it would help to stop people, you know, picking and choosing which ones they do, because everybody's got to do these 10, say, and then on top of these 10 they then might have to do other specialist units, so you don't get out of it by going off and doing something you don't need to be doing. And then obviously fixing the student support, whatever that might look like, be it webinars, be it practice papers, but just making the learning experience a bit more rounded. And in terms of actually, we were thinking about membership to the institute itself and doing more around career support, showing people what other things are available to them in terms of case studies of job roles, etc., etc. And then towards the end, actually, we thought, well, do we have enough data to make these decisions? I mean, we don't know anything about what kind of failure rates there are with the exams, you know, and things like that. How do we know that the exams that we're putting out are the right exams, and that people, you know, how many times are people taking them in order before they pass them and things like that? So maybe some more evidence-based information to help us make those strategic decisions. Did I forget anything? I'm taking that as that's good.
Excellent. So before I go on to then what I actually did, are there any more questions? No. Okay. Right. So she says trying to go forward, but it's not going forward. Hang on. There we go. Right, so I'm just going to move you guys over a bit because my screen's too big now. I'll just make you a little bit smaller. Just bear with me one sec. There we go. So the problems versus the opportunities, we're all really aligned. So we've got this problem with student experience, student support, student and employer outcome. So what the strategy was about simplifying the qualification framework to exactly what you said, Erin, about streamlining, getting rid of the wheat from the chaff kind of thing, and having a clear pathway, and as you did as well, Paula. Then obviously digital learning, so we're all aligned on that, and a cohort-based approach. Absolutely, we need community, we need support, we need people talking, we need students helping each other through peer-to-peer evaluation. We all understand in this environment how important that is to ever land real high-quality learning. So then we had the complexity of the qualifications pathways, and the area that I'm going down there, which I don't think anybody suggested actually, is a partnership approach. So we'll be outsourcing a bulk of the qualifications to people like Avado and Pearson and BPP and so on, because they deliver qualification learning really well every day of the week, and we, the CII, have never been set up to do anything other than create the content and create and run the exams. So I'm going out to experts to create the digital learning and to create the partnership approach for our students. You all again identified that students are only learning technical content, and one of the things that we are going to do is learning across the required knowledge, skills and behaviours. So exactly as you suggested, the lady who created the CIPD's profession map is now creating the CII's profession map, and it will have learning, knowledge, skills and behaviours in it across the levels that we all understand, so that actually the new qualifications framework will have that fully rounded development approach in it. Other issues, internal capacity, no agility. So one of the things we're going to do, which is quite radical, and we're going to go out into a mass consultation with the sectors in order to gain their support for doing this, is what we want to say to them is we only want a few core qualifications, and everything else we wish to be a development learning program. It will have a certificate from the CII, but it will not be a qualification. And what that will enable us to do is to have that basic core, and then any new content can be created as a development program. It can be literally put into the market, you know, on a Friday following the identification of the need for it, you know, a couple of weeks earlier. And then you can get really agile with what's needed in the market. You can adapt to things like COVID and climate risk, and reinsurance is a big thing at the moment. So we're really hoping that both the regulator and the sector are willing to innovate and say, okay, yes, we recognise you're a really great provider of learning content, CII, so we trust that a development programme will be as good as a qualification. So it's a really big shift, but it's the only way I can see to really build agility in and cut down those qualification numbers. Then we've got loads of assessments, as you know, and a very old hat methodology. So at the moment we're going through a full pilot in open book assessment. I'm sure you all know what that is, but basically it means the students can take their books into their exams, and they would do exactly what they would do with a client. They'll take a case study from a client. So perhaps the client wants to retire at 62. They're putting X amount into their pension at the moment. The kind of lifestyle that they want is you know, ABC. And then you would go away, you'd consult all of your models, and you would model a plan for them, and you would use your books and your colleagues and so on. So we are thinking about doing we're trialing actually open book assessment, which will enable us to to really demonstrate that this practitioner knows how to do their job, because they've taken a case study and developed what they do in the real world. And then again, lots of you said no perceived value from their professional body. We need to add value at every career stage. Completely agree. So we've already just signed up with Abintegro, who created the career platform for CIPD. And we'll be creating the career platform and the mentoring for CII. So that's great. We're all really massively aligned. So thank you for that. So moving on to stage 2 now. That was the plan. I created a strategic document. I took it to the board. I got it signed off. Everything was ready. And then, so the curveball came. COVID came. About 6 weeks after I joined the CII, I just about met everybody and started to get my thinking together. And we had lots of issues, but the biggest one was that our exam centre provider, which was City and Guilds, had in 2018 given us notice that they were no longer going to be our exam provider. They've pulled out of it altogether. So before I joined, the team had gone through a proper RFP process, a really thorough RFP process. So I want to stress that, because that's not the issue here. They went through a full RFP process and had just signed up with a new American examinations company called PSI. PSI are very famous in America. They run 365 days of the year, 24/7 multiple choice examinations. That's what they're famous for. So we'd signed a contract with them with a view to in August of 2020 launching multiple choice question papers online. Remember, at this point everything's written and in a centre. And then 2 years further on from that to do remote invigilation for our exams, and even further on from that, get rid of the 3-hour written papers. Okay, so we've just signed with this company. Literally, the contract was signed whilst I was there in January. COVID hits, all of the centres gets closed. We have no other way of delivering exams. Now, CII takes about 45 million altogether. The learning and assessment area is about 25 of that million, and the exams alone are worth 13 million to us every single year. There are 95,000 exam sessions a year, and we could see 13 million going down the drain. Now, whilst, as with lots of professional bodies, we do sit on a decent surplus, that would have been life-changing for the organisation. So I'm presented with this horror and I now have to decide what we're going to do. We have no way of delivering in centres. That is our only way of delivering. We don't have a single examination set up to be online. And we have, as I say, an expectation of 95,000 exam sessions in a normal year. So now that I've thrown you that curveball, what would you do now? Claire, back to the breakout rooms. You're on mute.
We'll share the
okay.
We will share in the feedback this time. So we are, after we've had a glass of wine, we're going to phone PSI and see what they could do to bring forward what they were offering for that 2022. So whether that is an interim online space they could provide for the learners to keep them going, and kind of use the expertise that they have to support. But then also we were going to be able to hopefully tick into one of our priorities, which is keep the learners warm and engaged with some online platforms, whether that's practice papers to keep the learning alive for them, giving them the use of an online space so they don't have to drive places. It's maybe a bit less time commitment for them, but then you get the option for kind of cohorts and that dialogue between them, but with the lens of it's just a delay, here's the education piece while we work on a solution. And that was kind of the key things we would do next.
Brilliant. I like the glass of wine. I think it was definitely more than one glass of wine for me. And Ruth, what about your team?
Okay, we had the slight advantage of Jose around the same time also implemented employee surveys, so we kind of stole the lessons he learned from that and said, well, we'd apply them to this. So we also agreed that we saw no option other than to try and bring forwards the move to the online examination. So one thing was the partnership with the provider, which is to kind of get in there and get involved so that you get to learn what they're doing and learn from them, and they should be learning from you how you operate. So you both learn together to create the end product rather than just, okay, we'll tell you what we want, you run off and kind of do it for us. The second one was to accept we're going to learn as we go, that things are going to go wrong, there are going to be problems, and that's how we learn, that's how we do. Where possible, have redundancies and plan Bs, but also just accept this is new ground.
Yeah.
And the third thing was a bit of an idea. It wouldn't scale to all sort of 95,000, I think it was, exams, but what perhaps for the more senior ones, you could change the format perhaps to an oral exam, or something for sort of the very highest level.
Yeah,
was an approach that could be taken.
Great, brilliant, thank you. Paula, your team?
I think that was me. So amongst the group. So one of the things one of the things that we identified was that the learners would still be wanting to crack on and pass their exams, and COVID being lockdown being the perfect time to do that, really, because there's nothing else to do. So an opportunity to push through. And the fact that maybe the exams were suspended because obviously people weren't supposed to go anywhere and be in the same room as other people, that we'd look at the remote invigilation and go on board with that American company that you talked about and see what experience they'd got of what they'd already got set up and what they needed from us. And I think the previous lady said about focusing on particular exams, identifying which ones were perhaps a priority, which ones had the biggest take up possibly, if there was ones that were cut, if you only stage them a few times a year, was there something coming up that people would, had been working towards, and thinking that they were going to get that out of the way in the next month or so. And then just focusing on those priority ones rather than everything, and to get some underway. But we were also aware that they're all internal issues, but there's external issues in terms of people at the other end, your customers, the learners, the students, that wouldn't have the resources to take on board remote testing. With the technical stuff. So, we found that with our students that there's this assumption that everybody's got everything at home now, everybody's got everything technological, and actually they haven't. And even what I was provided with from work to teach from home, it just wasn't usable, it just didn't work, so you end up using your own private stuff. And so it's that issue, isn't it? People can't go into work necessarily because they're not allowed to travel to work. The employers don't want them in, but they want them to do the exams. And so it's having all of those resources.
Great. Well, again, you make me all feel a lot better. It's been a tough year. I wanted to share. So, okay, this is what I did. So we did exactly what you suggested. We brought forward remote invigilation by 18 months. We did a tiny little pilot of 20 students, all went brilliantly. We then launched in July with our 4 largest written papers over 2 days. So that was about 5,000 people. And we used a different methodology than we wanted to. We used a thing called record and review remote invigilation, which basically does what it says on the tin. The student records themselves and it's invigilated after the event. And we didn't use live, what's called RP now, but it's basically live proctoring. Okay, so that's what I did. And this is what happened. It was an absolute disaster. So the first thing that happened was that when the students went on in the morning, the exam wasn't there. So they got on the phone to the helpline number that they had available, which was a PSI customer service number. PSI said that they didn't know who the CII were and suggested to the students that they called the CII. So they started to call the CII, and we only have 16 people in our customer services, and we weren't assuming that people would be calling us on that day. So we were very quickly overwhelmed, and people were waiting for 1 to 2 to 3 hours to get through on the phone. Eventually they did load the qualification, the first qualification exam, sorry, and because it hadn't been set up properly, it started to tell a lot of people that they were running out of time. And instead of the 3 hours that they thought they had, it was saying things like, you've got 45 minutes left. They also found that things like their keyboards weren't working. So for some people, the space bar didn't work. For other people, the letter T didn't work. It was an abject nightmare for them. And for lots of people, they got chucked out. So they might be 2 hours into a 3-hour exam and be just thrown out with no idea whether they could get back in, whether their work was lost, whether it was still there, or what have you. So that was the first exam of 4 over 2 days. The other 3 were all loaded, but all of them had the same issues from a system point of view that the first one had. So this is what happened. We received over 500 complaints from that July session, and in October we ran another set of big old written exams, if you like, which also went wrong for different reasons. So most of those were delivered in a centre, because if you remember, in October we were a bit more open. And on day 3, the whole system crashed and students lost everything. So I then sent an apology out to all students and all CII members, and our complaints then rose to over 1,000 after I apologised. This led to us needing to do 6,000 syllabus extensions, because as you can imagine, with tax tables and things of that nature, the syllabus runs out. So you have to learn a new syllabus. So we did 6,000 syllabus extensions, 6,000 free of charge resits. We lost 50% of our capacity in centres, because obviously some centres couldn't open at all and some could only take half the number of normal people. 7,000 of the multiple choice question papers had 15% of them had connection issues, and we delivered 29,000 exams instead of the 62,000 that we needed to deliver from April through to the rest of the year. We therefore lost 5 million of exams revenue and had significant, it was all over insurance and the financial services press, so significant brand damage. However, every cloud, what we did do is we brought forward remote invigilation by 18 months, and you'll see we're now doing circa 70% of all our exams are remote invigilation. We removed all written papers in one fell swoop. So from having everything written, now nothing is written apart from a couple of papers that we were winding down anyway. We were forced to innovate on assessment. So just to your point, we're doing open book now, we're doing coursework now. We recognise that, you know, 3-hour written exams are not appropriate in this environment, or any environment actually nowadays. We enabled students to further their career regardless of the pandemic. So they may well have had a really crap time, but most of them got through. And now we're back to pre-COVID numbers in terms of exams. Our pass rates have improved even before the exams, because people actually find it easier to type because they waffle less and are able to edit their answers. So it means that they're not saying the same thing over and over again. So our pass rates have improved, and we've ironed out most of our issues. And our international numbers are now growing significantly because we've got remote invigilation. So it wasn't all disaster. Oh, and 70 to 80% of exams are now remote invigilation. So my lessons learned are, don't assume your supplier really understands your world. This was our biggest problem in that we assumed that PSI, because they were world famous and, you know, doing all sorts of very famous companies and organizations and governments exams, would just be able to do the job. But, you know, they hadn't ever taken on anything quite as archaic as we were before. Don't put your biggest exams on one after the other. That's really stupid. And we didn't just do it in July, we did it in October as well. And that was just an internal thing. We'd always done them in July and October, but no one thought to say, well, why can't we spread them out? Really assume that students don't read instructions, or that your customers don't read instructions. So now we have dummy demo sites for every single set of exams, and we say to the students, you must go on, you must check your connectivity, you must download everything, have a play with the exam, have a play with the environment and the calculators, and we still get 52% of students don't do that. Plan for things to go wrong. So at the moment now we're so planned, we've got spare papers for every single qualification, we've got different ways of getting those spare papers to people, we've got spare kit, we've got spare everything. Don't underestimate what a huge shift remote invigilation is, and it's not actually the exam itself, it's the environment. It's doing the scan of the room and the webcam and the setting everything up and scanning under the table and all of that stuff. People find that really difficult to do properly. It's very alien to them. Communicate. We all know this, in many different ways. So not just by email, but, you know, on the web, physically, or every way you can think of. And then do not put your own personal email and phone number on an apology that goes out to thousands of people, because you know what? They ring you up and they send you emails, and often they're very angry. So that was it in a nutshell. That's my experience over the past year at CII. I have to genuinely say I've absolutely loved it to death. There were days when I burst into tears, but we have absolutely made it through. And I think, you know, when you go through something like that, one, you learn about your own resilience, but two, you dig deep and you know, find a way through. So I'm delighted that you all came up with so many of the same thinking that we put into practice. Thank you.
Jill, thank you ever so much. It falls to me to try and make the very best use of the next 10 minutes. So I'd encourage those of you who've joined the session to take yourself off mute and to ask Jill questions. Go for it, please.
Jill, you said in the break that you said that other organisations had stopped exams altogether. In hindsight, do you think you should have done that, or do you think you're now at a professional advantage by the fact that you're all remote invigilation?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I think we are now at an advantage, but how long the reputational damage will linger, I'm not sure. And I don't mean that from a brand point of view. I actually mean it from people are scared to take the exams now, because they've heard the horror stories that, you know, as you can imagine, the press went for it big style. So that's my concern, is that will people be put off? But we will always offer a centres model and a remote invigilation model, and at the moment we're doing loads of webinars with people who've had a great experience, saying, you know, just make sure you do all of the practice and this thing does work. But you know, I know that whilst we did lose 5 million in revenue overall as an organisation, we only lost 3 million out of our 45 million last year, which, you know, I don't think it's that bad, to be honest.
Thanks for that question, Claire. Who's next? Who'd like to ask the next question?
Jill, I wondered if you could say something about how you went about digitising the content, because that strikes me as being the biggest part of that.
Yeah, so the multiple choice questions weren't so hard, as you can imagine, because it was multiple choice on physical paper. So it's just putting multiple choice onto online. So that was just a volumes game and a questions game. It was the written papers, and one of the ones that we haven't yet solved actually is an exam called AF4, and it's very, very heavy on calculations. And we're still not comfortable with the PSI environment where you've got questions and spreadsheets and a calculator on screen all at the same time. It just doesn't work. It's too much. So it's less about the questions and more about how you go about using the environment. The screen unhelpfully splits in half. So if you've got a small display, say you're using a laptop, and you've only got a small, say a Microsoft Surface laptop display, it's too small. So stuff like that actually that was the real issue, rather than the, you know, the content, if you like.
Brilliant, thanks for that question, Paula. More questions, please.
Did you? I know you said that it's more about the technology than the content, but did you make any changes to the content in order to either to make it fit for online consumption, or just to take advantage of the opportunity to make the change to it at the same time?
Yeah, do you know what, Ruth, we didn't do a lot because one, time was of the essence, and of course we had 50 qualifications to get up, and also because of the off-qual rules, there's not that much you can change without then actually having to resubmit and so on. So in a perfect world, you'd have taken the opportunity to really redo them. But to be absolutely honest, no, we did very little of that. It was about all hands to the deck. Let's get these up and out there.
Jill, could you say something about how you went about supporting the learners in a more learning environment friendly way?
Yeah, we didn't do anything. So what we totally focused on is helping the learners pass the exams and understand the environment. What I'm going to be doing is everything we talked about, so creating digital cohorts, outsourcing to great learning providers, etc., etc. But that's all been put on the back burner whilst we solve this exam issues, but that's all coming down the line.
So this last year has more been about proof of concept for you rather than trying to do it all at once?
No, not even proof of concept. It's been complete crisis management, firefighting, don't lose the revenue. So the exams have been all consuming, if you like. So we just got to the point where the board had signed off the learning and assessment strategy. Then we went into exam crisis. That was all consuming. And now we've got to the point where we need to recover revenues quite substantially, because we've got membership issues as well, so that we can then turn everything else back on. So at the moment, I'm concentrating on a couple of areas. So for example, at CIPD, you know that we did experience assessment. That's not something that we do in CII, but it's something that we'll be bringing in. So the two things I'm focusing on at the moment are endpoint assessment for apprenticeships and experience assessment as two quick wins for the next sort of 6 months.
Excellent. More questions, please.
I've got another one if anybody hasn't got one.
Keep them coming, Paul. That's great.
Okay. What happened with the team? Because when we started this, we were talking about the internal team.
Yeah.
Were a bit overwhelmed and actually weren't very agile in their working.
Yeah.
I wondered if that has changed.
Yeah. So so the team have been absolutely brilliant. We're still stuck with all of these qualifications. Yeah, we're just now online, but we've still got 115 study texts and so on, and that's the next stage of the new qualifications framework and so on. So the team stepped up absolutely brilliantly. But what I would say is that it has been mentally quite damaging for the team, because if you imagine, if you come to work every day and all you want to do is deliver great exams and great qualifications content, we've had to watch remote invigilation episodes where people have had panic attacks actually on screen because they can't connect or they've been thrown out of their exam. We've seen all sorts of people just going through so much horror and upset as they've gone through the process and it's not worked for them. But actually it's been really upsetting for the team because they only come into work to do a great job. So it's been about making sure that they know that they're supported, and it's an absolutely no blame. We've not done anything wrong here. We were just trying to do something extremely differently. And whilst we've made some mistakes, like putting all your big exams on in one go, we did that together. You know, we made all of our decisions together, and to be honest, it's been a really good organizational team effort. And you know, now we're coming out the other side, but they've definitely been damaged.
Jill, thank you very much. I'd like to now pass back to Ruth. Or is Ruth coming up with a question?
Sorry, I do actually, because I'm just wondering if Jill can help me, because so many teams have had a horrific year in wherever we are, whatever we're doing. We've been coping, treading water, surviving. Things have gone wrong. Have you done, or are you planning anything around kind of shoring up the team and saying, actually, you've done great just by getting through it? And I'm just wondering how you did that.
So we do big awards sessions, and at Christmas, when we could start to see the chink of light, if you like, the whole team, and that's not just my team, it's customer services, it's business operations, IT, the whole team, the whole exams project team won our biggest award. We also gave them actually quite a large bonus to say thank you, and our CEO was very much around thank you for working so hard, for getting us through. There was not a hint of, you know, oh it didn't work at all. It was all about what we'd learned and what we'd created. And we're also quite big on well-being. So this year we've been doing all sorts of well-being initiatives. We've just finished spiritual well-being fortnight, which was fabulous. So we do a lot of stuff like that to alternately support them as well.
Thank you,
Ruth.
Brilliant. Yes, I'm going to wrap things up a little bit. Jill, would you mind clicking through to the next slide, please? So first of all, thank you so much, Jill. That has been really, really interesting. I've certainly enjoyed that, and I know that in the breakout rooms we've had good fun sort of engaging with what happened and what we do, and we've certainly learned a lot. And thank you everybody who's come along tonight, who's participated. I say that I've learned some interesting things in my breakout room from the various people who actually come from the insurance industry, which was great. And thank you, James, for keeping the Q&A going, and Claire for masterfully handling the breakout rooms. You might note, everybody, on this slide we have the Survey Monkey. There's a crafty QR code if you want to get your phone out, you can do that. There's also the link, which I will put in the chat momentarily. And I'll do it now. Got a whole bunch of stuff.
Ruth, let me do that.
Are we going to do that? Thank you, James. Just please, if you could put the codes in, the link, sorry, and then Jill, would you mind please going along to the next slide? So this is just to remind everybody that we've got more coming up. There's an event on the 7th of June, Fairness at Work. We can also provide the link for that. It's going to be another great evening, and you'll want to get your place saved in that nice and quickly. We do have events in the pipeline starting from October after the summer break. So again, if you pencil those into your diary, then you know that you'll have the time for it. What we'll say is when you sign up on Eventbrite, which is how we do this, you will then later on be sent a link to Zoom, which obviously everybody's managed because we're all here this evening. But it's just worth remembering that after the initial sign up, you've then got to sign up on Zoom. Otherwise, you won't be able to get in and you'll be missing out. There's one more slide, please, Jill. Thank you. So this is just another reminder to everyone that we would love, love, love to get more people involved in the committee. It's a really great gang. So you meet some interesting people. You get to learn from lovely people like Jill. You know, so there's everything to gain from taking part if you can find the time for that. And so the method for getting involved, if you email bedford@cipdbranch.co.uk and just put for the attention of James Tupper at Learning Matters, and so we'll get back to you and tell you how you can get involved. So hopefully we'll have some links popped in the chat. Thank you, James. I've also got a couple of things I just had ready to go, so I'm just going to hit go. So if you want to take part in various things, please use the chat. Otherwise, thank you very much, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed this evening as much as I have, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks all.